Zach Martin. It is time for Rock Bio, and we have Jeffrey Campbell. Jeffrey Campbell, today is your rock and roll biography. Tell us all about yourself. You can go from the beginning. You could start where you are now and then work backwards. You can time travel. We use quantum physics on this show. You could talk about your recording arts. You could talk about your education, the first time you got sent to your room, whatever you want to share with us.
Here's what I look at my resume this way, is a lot of years in the trenches with a few highlights that, people remember you for the highlights, the kind of lines they put in your obituary or whatever, but it's not an accurate portrayal of the ups and downs of the business. And, I started playing in bands when I was about 12, so I spent junior high school and high school, college, and post-college playing in cover bands. That's where I learned my trade. It's funny, people think, because I toured with Sting, I've worked on Broadway for the last 20 years, and they go, oh, that's so impressive. I go, you know where I learned how to play? Bars, trying to get drunk people to not throw things at us, fraternity parties. And it's like, that's where I learned. And I'll have inquiries from people that want to sub for me on my Broadway show, and they go, oh, well, I've got my master's from Juilliard and blah, blah, blah. And I go, have you ever played a bar? Because that's where that's the kind of guy I'm looking for, that knows how to entertain people. I had that happen. I studied at the University of Miami in their jazz program. And I remember getting there and my teacher saying to me, he said, Jeff, you confused me. He said, you don't know as much as these other guys, but you sound better than a lot of these other guys. And what it was, well, a lot of these guys were in the practice room with the metronome on, learning advanced jazz songs. I was playing Motown and Philly soul for drunken frat boys, so, it's one thing to play your instrument. It's another thing to communicate with the people and play music that moves them. So, not that that's really my bio, but I think the years I spent in the trenches playing cover bands, where we play 3-4 hours a night in hotel lounges or bars or fraternities, is where I really learned how to play.
When did you get your first instrument? What was it and who gave it to you?
I probably picked up a guitar when I was 8 or 9. My brother won a guitar in a raffle or at a local department store. And so I started strumming it and loved it. And I don't know what it was, but I would sit in my room when I was 12, 13 and listen to Led Zeppelin and the Allman Brothers with my headphones on. It's like I always knew I wanted to do that. So as my brother, who is also a musician, always says, he's a saxophonist, he always says, you don't choose music, it chooses you. So you kind of know. I have friends that'll say, I think my kid might want to take guitar lessons. I said, should I give him lessons? I go, you'll find out very quickly if your child is a musician or not, because if it's a chore, they're not a musician.
What was the first song that you actually played? Learn how to play, I should say.
One of the first things I remember playing is House of the Rising Sun, the Animals.
Oh, that's great.
On
Good
guitar.
one.
And then Hey Joe, Jimi Hendrix was an early one.
Another. Well, you really challenged yourself with that one, right?
All Right Now by Free.
Good one. One of my favorite songs. I never get bored of hearing it. I can hear it over and over.
I love it. Yeah. And that guitar solo is one of the first things I learned. So.
Yeah, that's a good.
But it's funny, as I go back and listen to recordings of my band, it was funny, my band in junior high or middle school, it's hilarious to listen to our repertoire because we will play a Four Tops tune into Whipping Post. It was like everything went,
right.
It didn't matter. You could play Allman Brothers and James Brown back to back, which is, if you go back and listen to, I love listening to Casey Kasem on the weekends from the XM. He does the top 40 countdown from the week of the 70s.
Our long distance request.
Yeah,
little
but
Johnny
like,
lost his dog. His dog died.
Janis Joplin, then James Brown, then it just the blend was great.
Well, in the old days of NEWFM, when Scott Meany was on and the various other legendary disc jockeys, they didn't just play Rolling Stones, AC/DC, and Led Zeppelin. You would hear Barbra Streisand after some sort.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you'd hear Stony End as Barbra Streisand's hit, and then you'd hear a Sex Machine by James Brown right after it.
Good song.
Yeah, and I like it. It's great. I have a friend who says 1972 was the greatest year ever for music. Now, I do not subscribe to the good old days because I think that's I don't like buying into good music is dead. I think there's good music being made today.
Oh, man.
I just think that we need the perspective of time to decide what's good and what's not. And I have friends say, oh, music was great in the 60s. I go, yeah, like Yummy, 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 I Got Love in My Tummy, and 1, 2, 3, Red Light. I did a gig with Ron Dante, who was the guy who produced the Archies. He was
Right.
the Archies, right? And we did some kind of promo thing. It was a charity event, and so I got to work with him. And he joking, or he told me, which I loved. He said, you know, everybody says that '60s, '70s music was the greatest, and he said, Sugar, Sugar knocked Hey Jude out of the #1 slot.
Yeah, think about that. So, de gustibus non est disputandum, taste is not to be argued, but you got to wonder what they were smoking.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I love what Frank Zappa did. I could just imagine the song Wowie Zowie.
I'm not a big
All right,
Zappa authority. So.
Well, my daughter discovered Wowie Zowie and Frank Zappa and all of these things. And as I'm listening to Frank's, he would mock those kind of songs by doing his own version of it.
Sure.
Yeah, it was just,
Yeah.
to me, that's kind of funny. After you learned these songs, what guitarist did you want to be like the most?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. When I listened to recordings of my band, and in junior high, we were playing a mix of everything. But as it got into high school, it really got focused into the R&B thing. And I find it funny. I'll go back and listen to high school recordings and go, wow, there's no guitar solos on these songs. We were playing Average White Band, the Bar-Kays, Earth, Wind and Fire,
Oh, man.
all that stuff. Al Green, and I was like, for whatever reason, I was drawn to that. I'm from North Carolina, so it was definitely growing up in an R&B kind of soul thing, and I was just, for whatever reason, I was drawn to it, which doesn't serve me so great in the new, where everybody can shred and Eddie Van Halen and all that kind of stuff. Because I always say to people, I'm a Steve Cropper guy. I'm Booker T and the MGs, you know, and I would rather play Sitting on the Dock of the Bay or Soul Man than this flashy stuff.
Speaking of Booker T and the MGs, who is the guitarist?
Steve Cropper.
Steve Cropper.
Mhm.
Oh, now that you mention it,
Yeah.
he is with Dave Mason, and they put out a great live album.
Uh-huh.
Dave Mason, Steve Cropper, and Gretchen somebody.
Mhm.
But anyway, it's really good. Funny that you mentioned that, because I was just listening to Steve Cropper the other day. That's cool.
Yeah, well, and it's a very understated thing that he does, and it's not flashy. And you know, I spoke to my brother the other day, and he had gone to see a jazz artist who will remain nameless, and he said it was so much technique involved that he didn't enjoy it.
There was no soul. If
Yeah,
it's
and-
too much
and-
technique, there's
yeah,
not enough
and,
soul in it. I get it.
So I was always drawn to the, you know, the less technique and more of serving the song, supporting the song, playing great rhythm guitar. My favorite guitar players are the guys on the Earth, Wind and Fire records. Nile Rodgers was Chic. The stuff he did was Chic, and it's, you know, whereas you ask most guitar singers, they're going to name the guy that can play the blazing solo, whether it's Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, and even if you go back and listen to Clapton and Hendrix and those guys, they weren't amazing technicians, but they were amazing soulful players.
Well, when you mention those guitar players and then think of soulful and understated and doesn't overpower the music, David Gilmour.
Yeah,
David Gilmour
sure.
comes to
It's
mind because,
textural.
and when you say that, oh, that's a great guitar player, people fight me on that. No, he's not a great. I'm like, no, he is a great guitar player. Think about Comfortably Numb, and you just get it. It causes this emotion to come out of you, and you start sailing when you listen to it. Now, Jimi Hendrix, he really broke the mold in that he was a lefty, and so he flips it the other way, restrings the instrument, and how many people can emulate that other than Stevie Ray Vaughan?
But if you go and if you look at Hendrix's history, he played with the Isley Brothers. He was a R&B,
James Brown, I think.
He was an R&B guitar player, but then he just mixed it with the psychedelic thing and came up with that great. But to me, my favorite Hendrix tunes from Axis Bold as Love, they're very soulful. They're not hard rock at all. They're very soulful tunes.
Well,
Little Wing sounds like
that's a good
Curtis
one.
Mayfield and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Impressions to me. It sounds like Curtis Mayfield on acid.
Castles Made of Sand, Angel.
Wait Until Tomorrow is a tune I always like. Yeah, it's
And of course, all along the Watchtower, he covers Dylan, which was his favorite artist. You know, I see. I remember one time, and I'll just tell you this because we're talking about music and the history of it, and you're telling your story. It's really interesting when you meet some of these people that are behind the music, and you get their perspective. One time I asked Graham Nash who his favorite vocalist was, and he told me Bob Dylan. I'm like, wow. And I re-examined it. I'm like, you know what? Maybe in the studio, yes, I can hear that. I've seen him live, and I'm like, what did I just hear? But there was something about him in the studio, and then when he does his acoustic stuff early on, I can hear what Graham Nash is talking about.
Right.
A lot of times, and for instance, I might not have been a fan of somebody, but after I met them, I became a fan. Justin Hayward. All of a sudden, I was like kind of about Moody Blues. But when I heard their story, I'm like, wow, I really like these guys. What they did is they conned the label into letting them use new technology to create a stereo orchestrated album that's what the record company want. And they went in there, go, oh yeah, and did their own thing. I think that kind of stuff is hysterical. So I became a fan of that. Who did you grow up listening to? And as you learn your craft, who did you meet that you thought, wow, what I thought about this person is total opposite, and maybe I wasn't a fan of his stuff, but now I am.
Well, to your point a little bit, I'm sure I could say that I'm a Bob Dylan fan, but a story I love to tell that I heard, and I don't remember where I heard the story, but to your point about these singers and now with American Idol and The Voice, we're so trained to these singers being acrobatic that you go back and listen to the rock singers of the classic rock age, and they weren't great singers,
No.
But Bob Dylan, and the story I heard, it involved Sam Cooke and Bobby Womack. And there's a great new documentary on Sam Cooke on Netflix. It's great about his life and death and all that. But the story I'd heard was Sam was mentoring Bobby, and he played him Bob Dylan. And this documentary goes into how Sam Cooke's going, wow, I heard Blowing in the Wind. I'm like, you got this white Jewish guy writing the civil rights tune. He's like, as soul artists, we should be writing it. But Sam Cooke played for some Bob Dylan for Bobby Womack, and Bobby Womack commented he did not like the way he sang. He said, I don't like that singing. And Sam Cooke's response was, we're not listening for singing, we're listening for the truth. And that's what I hear now. The music that I like always has truth in it. And while I might not like Bob Dylan's voice, for years people would rave over Tom Waits, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I don't get it. But now I hear it and I go, I see what people are liking about this. There's a truth in there. It's not people showing off, which gets back to my Steve Cropper thing about guitar players. I feel like so many young singers, they're showing me all this technique, but they're not connecting with the lyrics. They're not connecting with the meaning, which the king of that, of course, was Frank Sinatra. I mean, you listen to him sing about being sad and lonely, you believe it.
Yeah,
he's telling you the story.
Yes, because he was a singer and an actor together,
right.
So he played the part in the song.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is what a lot of singers don't do. They hit the notes, they hit the riffs,
right.
But they could be singing the phone book. Whereas if you listen to Sinatra sing in the wee small hours of the morning, it brings a tear to your eye. He sounds so sad.
And automatically when you said that, I think of Let It Be by Paul McCartney, and how I could just, you have the picture in your mind. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's the Blessed Virgin Mary. Mm-hmm. For him, it was his, I guess, mother. I don't remember the story, but I have almost like a religious experience when I hear. Mm-hmm. And then when I listen to, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I have listened to various demos, and then I discover all kinds of things. Number one is, hey, you know what? I'm a much better vocalist and singer than I ever gave myself credit. I could do it. Mm-hmm. I know I could. And then the second thing is, wow, these are totally different lyrics than the one that they released down the road, like Jealous Guy by the Beatles. On one of the anthologies, the lyrics are completely different, but the tune is the same. Yeah. And as I'm listening to all these, even Robert Plant, when I listen to the mix-outs and the demos on In Through the Outdoor, I'm like, hey, you know what? I think I could do this, right. And then I'll go and try. And my friend Patrick Bamburek, who's a great solo artist, we ended up doing various projects just like that. And I guess the bottom line is, you're never too late to, it's never too late. It's too late when you die. You can always reinvent yourself. You can always go in different directions. You can rediscover. You can, maybe switch up how you're doing things. So when you talked about the highs and the lows, obviously you've had to develop a skill set to get out of those lows. But what would that be? If you were listening to somebody and they were coming to you, man, career just ain't right, man. I'm just really down. What would you tell that person?
Well, I mean, sometimes I wonder about it because, again, my trajectory in New York was quite unique in that I moved here, and within 8 months I was touring the world with Sting. My job at the time, I was selling candy in Broadway theaters at the concession stands, and I had to quit my job selling candy to play in Sting's band. I went from selling candy at the Gershwin Theater to being on Saturday Night Live 2 weeks later.
That's amazing.
So I tell people, and I've always joked, and I've been working my way down the ladder of success ever since. Because when you start at the top, touring the world with Sting, and he was 2 years removed from the Police, so he's a huge rock star. Our first gig was in Rio de Janeiro to 250,000 people. So I was thrown in the deep end of rock and roll. So I spent my first year in New York. I had moved to New York and said, I'll give it 1 year. The eve of my 1 year anniversary, I was at Madison Square Garden with Sting. And I thought, hey, New York's easy. I got this figured out. And God's like, we're going to show you. So I spent a year on the road with Sting. Then I started over. Then I'm playing catering halls in the Bronx. Then I'm playing catering halls in Brooklyn and bars in Manhattan to 9 people or whatever. And I was going, well, this isn't supposed to work this way. I'm kind of doing it backwards. But I was discussing with my wife the other day. I said, I'm not sure why I soldiered through that, because it was very challenging to go, man, I used to be somebody. I was at Madison Square Garden, and now I'm, playing at a catering hall in the Bronx. But, I never questioned quitting. It's just like, you just stay there, you're committed to it, and you're like, I don't know whether it's pride or tenacity or just being stupid, but I just kept going through. And then after about 10 years of struggling freelancing, I stumbled onto the Broadway scene, and I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of good luck on Broadway, so I've been basically working on Broadway the last 20 years, 14 years of that being with Mamma Mia, the ABBA musical. Everybody thinks I'm a genius. I go, well, everybody looks like a genius when you end up in a show that runs 14 years. But I do point out to people, to your initial question, they think, oh, Jeff, great career. Sting, Mamma Mia. I go, oh, man, there was a lot of really bad gigs in between those two things. It was 10 years of paying serious dues with a resume that included Sting. So I played in bands for 10 years before Sting and 10 years after Sting that you were playing 3-4 sets a night in a tuxedo or in a smoky bar. So
for those of us who've been at the bitter end of that, so to speak, it makes us better people, so that if we're ever in that situation, we'll handle it much better. And, you mentioned God before. I always looked at it this way. We have to learn to be patient and actually trust in God, if you say you believe in God, because his plan is always going to be better. What the hardest part is just waiting there. Yeah. The best thing that we can learn is patience and bearing it patiently, because that's the seed of wisdom. But I think all of those experiences, much like you're talking about, where you reach the tops, you go to the bottoms, because it was one of those cycles for me. Really, it's a gift, but you just gotta look at it better, and always remember this: it's not what you do, it's who you are that really matters, and who you are comes out when you play your instruments. So I'll tell you this: anytime you're feeling down, you give me a call, you send me a text, I go, dude, get your head out of your ass. You got a lot going for you.
Well, and gratitude is, to me, the only key. It's the way I survive. I count my blessings. I don't count the things that are tough. And I always look around me. You don't have to look far, especially in New York, find somebody in much worse position.
That's right.
You.
Yes.
So you go, hey, I'm not collecting cans to help try to buy food right now.
That's right.
So when I hear the people outside going through my recycling and banging bottles, I don't curse them. I go, I bless those people, because they're trying to get money a nickel at a time to feed themselves. But, I definitely have the stories of pushing my car down the Cross Bronx at 2 a.m. in my tuxedo because the car died.
See, that's funny.
Yeah. And this is after Sting.
Yeah.
And also because I did Sting first. So then I had to pay all these dues post Sting, but I hung in there. But you talk about the being patient, and I address it in my book. And it was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. And a guy told me, he said, patience is an action. Because some days you get up and go, I got to make something happen today. I got to make something happen. And he said, patience is an action.
That's right.
So some days when I feel like nothing's happening, what am I going to do? I go, maybe today I'll be patient. And so I try to think that way.
Yeah, see that, there was something happening here. The message is to anybody listening, be patient.
Yeah. And being patient is not the equivalent of doing nothing. Now, I know plenty of people that sit on bar stools or in coffee shops and talk big, but then they never roll up their sleeves and do the work. And it's like, I read a quote one time that I love. It says, to really succeed, you have to be prepared to work without applause. There's a lot of work that you do on your own.
That's right.
I mean, it took me 5 years to write my book, and it was a slog. And I was like, I never knew if I'd get finished or not. And there was nobody there cheering me on as I was trying to write that book. There's nobody cheering you on when you're writing that song or whatever you're doing, or learning the software. We were talking earlier about learning software. You just have to roll up your sleeves and do it. You can't sit there and talk about doing it. You have to do it. But then sometimes it's like, okay, now let's wait for the miracle, wait for the break.
The whole faith in yourself, faith in God, faith in people, it's something that takes a lot of work, like you say. The best thing for you, I think this is great. I wish I had the gift to be able to pick up a guitar and the talent to play that. You could take that wherever you go. Yeah. Right? And that's cool. You know,
well, that's what I always say about guitar. I go, it's kind of hard to take a piano to the park.
That's right.
So guitar is a great portable instrument, so it is fun to do that.
And nobody gets upset like they do if you bring out your trumpet.
Right.
Shut up! You're loud! You know, guitar, you can play it softly and, you know.
Well, and the other thing you were talking about trumpet earlier is like, and I used to see guys I went to school with their lip looks like hamburger, you know, because
that kind of constant stuff.
And I always commiserate with singers, drummers, trumpeters. It takes physical ability. You know, you have to use. It's more athletic.
Yeah,
I think you
really
could play
is.
a guitar on your deathbed if you had to. But to sing, to play a trumpet, anything involves moving air or all your limbs.
Look,
guitar is a pretty lazy instrument.
You're right. There's physicality.
Yeah.
I could no longer play after I busted up my teeth and I lost those bones. It was like it was over. It's sort of like you're a pitcher and then you throw out the arm and you just can't pitch it anymore. And it's heartbreaking when that does happen to you, especially at a young age, because they're like, oh man, now what am I going to do?
Well, and obviously in guitar, if you broke your hand or something like that, that could be a problem. But I'm just saying the wear and tear of guitar playing is minimal compared to the wear and tear of singing, playing trumpet.
All right, what is the name of your book?
The name of my book is Do Stand So Close, My Improbable Adventure as Sting's Guitarist. I wrote it in a journal form. It follows me moving to New York, selling candy on Broadway, out of the blue, landing this audition with Sting, getting the gig, going around the world for a year with Sting, coming home and dealing with the aftermath of the humiliating, hey, I'm not famous. I just worked for a guy that was famous, and the phone's not ringing. So I've gotten a lot of great response for it. I wrote it as a great airport read, beach read, page turner kind of thing. That's what I tried to write.
Well, did Sting read it?
It is a love letter to Sting because that guy changed my life. I mean, I know many guitar players that spend their whole life and you trudge around in anonymity, and it's like guys much better players than me, but I was in the right place at the right time and got the gig.
Hey, he gave you the shot.
Yeah, and I was able to do it. I was tall enough to ride the ride, and I address it at the end of my book. I mean, in any business, but certainly show business, credentialism is huge. And when people see you've played with Sting, that's a credit that's 30 years old for me that still gets my phone calls returned, still gets doors open for me, because they're auditioning guys and they get down to the last two guys and they go, I don't know, who should you use? Well, let's use the guy that Sting used.
Yeah, it's easier to remember because they can't remember the names. Well, let's use the Sting dude. You know?
Right. Well, and it's a validation from Sting. Yeah. They go, hey, if you could spend a year on the road with Sting, you're doing something right. I mean, the credit is not an empty, meaningless credit, just luck of the draw. And it's a shorthand for people going, plays well with others, can stand pressure, you know, and so.
Well, and I'll tell you that you wrote the book in the best light possible. You tell the truth when necessary, but the end of the moral of the story is this guy changed your life and gave you the shot, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I don't like when people write books about others and it's all negative. No. You got to balance it out. Just tell the truth. That's all I want to know. And don't make up any stories that are not part of it.
Well, when I was trying to pitch it to publishers, which was
they wanted the salacious stories.
They wanted the salacious stories, and my pitch was humorous anecdotes and poignant revelations. And one agent said to me,
"Smart man,
how poignant are these revelations?" You know, he's digging to see if I had any dirt, and I was very clear to anybody early on. The book I've written is a love letter to Sting. It's warts and all about show business. I said, but the only scandalous behavior in the book is mine. Now, I get into plenty of jackpots in the book, and too much partying and, you know, wine, women, and song. But, you know, I don't implicate anybody else.
Did your wife read the book?
My wife has read the book. Oh,
gosh. Yeah, you still have to get extra roses and stuff?
No, she was totally cool about it. We joke in the household because there's some more like salacious parts with me with professional ladies I'd met on the road.
All right, yeah. Remember,
my
they're
wife-
not a tax write-off.
It was
Not
like
a business
it
expense.
was water off of a duck's back for my
Oh
wife.
my! Oh, well, you got the right one. Do you have a website where people
I
can?
do. JeffreyLeeCampbell.com. It talks about my career. There, you can buy my book through the website. It directs you to Amazon. And one thing I had done, because I'd heard this from readers, I created a page of videos, of companion videos that help you go through the book. Because I read
that's
a
cool.
book recently, The History of Louie Louie was the book. And it
From
was,
the Kingsman?
Yeah. And
There's a history about it?
There's an entire book by Dave Marsh about the history of Louie Louie, which, ended up getting investigated by J. Edgar Hoover and Paul
Subversive
Revere.
lyrics.
Yeah, Paul Revere and the Raiders had a hit with it, and all this kind of stuff. But it was so cool to read the book and have Spotify and YouTube fired up on my computer. And when they say, oh yeah, when the Kingsmen were on Shindig, and notice how, and I just go to YouTube and type in Kingsman Shindig and see that performance.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Yeah.
Barry White's version of Louie Louie. Go to Spotify. And
Barry White did a
Barry
version?
White has been covered by
Oh,
everybody.
Louie,
I know.
Louie.
So I'm like, with the internet, it's a great companion for reading books. And so I even did that. There's probably a dozen videos on my website where I say, okay, performance on Saturday Night Live where I got to play Little Wing. Here it is.
Do you have a Facebook page?
I do have a Facebook page, Jeffrey Lee Campbell.
Oh, that's cool. All right, we'll link up on that.
But the website is really probably more, Facebook is a little more casual, but
what we'll do is we'll link your site to my site,
right,
to make it easy for people.
Right, yeah,
'Cause a lot of people can't spell Jeffrey properly.
Or they always think it's Jeffrey and it's Jeffrey.
Yeah.
But
Jeffrey.
R-E-Y. Not
Campbell, and they always forget about the B.
The P.
The P or the B.
Campbell.
Campbell.
Yeah,
Something like that.
Yeah. So
it's not an easy name to spell when you think about it.
No, it's not. And I always say, like the soup, and I remember when I was a kid growing up and people called me Campbell Soup, and I hated it. And now I wish I was of the Campbell Soup family.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Living in a big mansion somewhere.
Well, I like to thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
I think this was just a lot of fun. We're going to have you back again.
Great.
It's good to talk about this kind of stuff. People learn, and then we discover stuff about ourselves. Then the next thing you know, the right person hears it, and then you're out on the road with, I don't know, take your pick.
Yeah, well, and
because there's a lot of crappy guitar players that are going out with these pop stars right now.
Yeah.
They really need better musicianship.
Well, it's fun to go down the rabbit holes, and one thing makes us think of another story to tell. So I enjoy that too.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Broadcasting from the Rock and Roll Bomb Shelter.
I'm ready.
I wanna rock! Surrounded by radioactive biscuits and the world-famous Rock Hives, located 40 feet beneath the radio station. It's the Big Fat American Rock Show with your host, the Doc of Rock, the Professor, everyone's favorite mad music magician, crazy uncle, and your best friend in the whole wide world, Zach Martin.